Okie dokie then. Right, there's some more stupid things knocking around in my old head, My big, stupid, tiny head. Actually first I just wanted to quickly address my botched attempt at, giving a hypothetical yesterday, which was related to immigration. It was really hard. It's really hard to get across what I'm saying without. Obviously, it's related to the fact that the current issue we face of mass immigration, and the fact that it is a culture clash. There is a culture clash because different cultures exist, and Sam Harris done enough on the topic of whether certain morals can ever be judged to be superior to others. Lots of people hold that view, and I once erroneously somewhat thought that for a second, but when you actually start to think about it really, you have to admit that there's some kind of progress being made, and therefore some ideas eventually give way to others, and first of all to assume that we're at the pinnacle is wrong. So I'm not saying in any way that we're, an example for the rest of time, but I think one of the things that we rely upon most, I hope most of us do, is subjecting ourselves to the authority of reason and logic, and even Sam pointed out some things like the way we treat women isn't necessarily perfect either, but it probably is better than not having the freedom to bare one's skin if they wish. Not that we have that either, but we've somewhat gone the other way as well with the porn industry and all that. Anywho, the basic hypothetical was some people you want in your society and some people you don't, and I'm saying that the attributes that might make someone you don't want in your society are harder to address and adapt if they're rooted in religious belief. I should probably put some evidence forward for that, but I believe the evidence exists, so why don't you go search for it? And if I'm wrong, then, turns out I was wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. But hey, maybe I shouldn't be sure. Maybe that's an error on my part, but I'm only human. We all are. But hopefully, eventually, there'll be people that aren't just human, better than human. Okay. I guess this is something that pissed me off the other day. Pissed me off a while back, and then it reared its ugly head again recently. Actually, what have I covered recently? I don't think I've covered this yet. Hold on. Yeah, okay, I'll start with this. I'll just read them verbatim again. I think when we introduce a truly super intelligent AGI to the internet, and specifically YouTube, the first things it will draw from its experience will be a terrible taste in music, a poor understanding of what true comedy and entertainment are as a whole entails. That doesn't make sense grammatically, but whatever. And assuming if we've installed any, even if rudimentary form of logic and reason, a complete and utter disbelief in religion. Pretty much every topic can be boiled down to two basic fundamental and contradicting viewpoints. It's pretty far out and probably wrong, but anyway. One in favour of some motion and one against it. When new topics come up, such as the humanity's role in an AGI world, some views will be more common than others, and just like any topic, there can then be a crude form of group who hold one view and another that holds the opposite. And so it follows that there is always going to be a probability that two completely unrelated people will come to very similar conclusions. Much like when I was thinking about this, basically if you think about you can be on either side of any topic, then the probability of two people being on the same side of many topics isn't actually that big given the size of the population. So I'll justify why I'm talking about this. But so let's say, I'd make it really simple, but if people are against the death penalty, then you're either going to be for or against it. But obviously everything isn't this simple, but you can kind of break everything down to being on one side or the other. of, pretty, in simple terms. Anyway, and then you might have people who are religious. So the chance of people, let's say if it was 50-50, then you'd have a 50% chance of being against the death penalty, and then a 50% chance of being against religion or whatever. I'm not doing a good job of explaining this, but anyway, chance of, so you could be like one person, or if you're both against the death penalty and against religion, then the probability gets less that you're both those things, but there will still be people, so you can keep going. So if you keep adding 50-50 things, then the probability gets smaller of you being exactly the same as someone else, but there's still a probability, and given the size of our population, there are going to be lots of people that basically follow the same tree, probability tree. And this is what this taps into what I'm about to say. Much like I have recently come to the. I'll just start from where I finished. That there is always going to be a probability that two completely unrelated people will come to very similar conclusions. Much like I have recently come to the realization that many of my views, which I thought to be unique and original, are largely in accordance with those held by Yuval Noah Harari. And whilst I don't believe his views at any point influenced my own during the formation of my views, it is true that he came to those conclusions first. Unfortunately, ideas adhere to the first come, first served principle, and when someone comes to the same conclusions entirely independently and of their own volition, the credit for the originality of those ideas will likely go to the person who got there first. The natural argument. This ridiculous notion that we as a species, by our desire for technological advancement, are losing touch with our natural being is a gross abuse of the word. What exactly is natural? By which I mean, which point of natural history and biological evolution do you wish to return? Hang on. I've heard in defence of killing animals in opposition to cultured meat. That's not cultural. That's not natural. Even though you cause the animal to suffer by killing it, you respect the fact that it gives its life up for you. Involuntarily, might I add. What the fuck are you talking about? Yes, whilst a farming process that involves a more intimate relationship with the animal is far more admirable than the factory farming that exists today, it is infinitely less admirable than the production of meat that is cellularly identical but devoid of any form of suffering at a conscious level. If you want that form of farming, be my guest and move to Africa. I'm sure the intimate relationship you desire with the animals you wish to eventually kill and eat will be available to you, provided you give up the very idea of abundance. Again, what part of natural human history are you clinging to? Or perhaps you wish to be more in tune with the rest of the animal kingdom's approach to nature's course. Well, I can't see any problem with that, provided we make the assumption that humanity's increased ability for logic and reason have had no impact on the development of defensible morals, and subsequently rape, which occurs almost universally throughout the animal kingdom, is a totally justifiable way of life and procreation. Or perhaps you wish to go further back, to the time of protobacteria. Why do we think it's okay to reproduce sexually? Why are we so averse to the way we should reproduce naturally, which is as the bacteria do, asexually? These kinds of ridiculously nonsensical statements have serious ramifications. They are used to incessantly oppose and inhibit both moral and technological advancement, and even to actively hinder human well-being, anti-vaccine propaganda being a prime example. Something people need to become more aware of is the fact that evolution is a random process. Whilst it is true that over long periods of time the vast majority of mutations that occur and are passed on will be beneficial in some way, that's the selection part of natural selection, it does not follow that all things that have come to be through evolution are or were the best possible mutations that could or even that did occur. They are simply the ones that survived to be passed on. I'm under no illusions that my balding head gives me a statistical advantage for survival over my unbalding peers. We are still somewhere along the timeline of evolution. We are definitely not at the end. Ultimately, I believe the random process of natural selection is inferior to the intelligent I believe the random process of natural selection is inferior to the intelligent design we will be capable of on the advent of the development of truly superhuman AGI, and so they will be the next stage of evolution. The programming AGI with human morals and values problem. It seems fairly obvious to me that we need to come up with a set of fundamental core principles / fundamental basic principles like those that exist in physics, that we accept are true because everything we observe is in complete accordance with these. I suppose, if I had to guess at what one of these core principles is in physics, I'd opt for the law of conservation of energy. To the best of my knowledge, that is at the foundation of objective reality. Yes, it can be said that the discovery of quantum physics may have caused us to question those fundamental core principles, but whether the fact that this could occur was a fault of the principles in the first place is open to debate. To get the ball rolling, I would suggest that one of these fundamental core moral principles would be that good is better than evil. This may seem vacuous at first, but upon consideration is a necessity. Without the distinction, how is a robot to decide? Of course, you then have to decipher the nuances of what makes some things good, objectively good, and objectively bad. But again, thankfully we have logic and reason, which incidentally would also have to be instilled in some form into the fundamental core moral principles. And also people saying things like love and compassion aren't logical, but I assure you they are. I think of light of the technology readily available to us, the inaccessibility of higher education, or rather the unattainability of qualifications as evidence of higher education without ridiculously unnecessary cost is outrageous. Why can't people pay a fee to take an exam, regardless of whether they've been attending a specific university or not? If the exams are to test the understanding, why should where that understanding has come from matter? The internet is infinitely better suited to educating the masses at massively reduced cost. Fuck you, elitism, you elitist cunt. Furthermore, I am living proof of how easy it is to cheat the system. I have not cheated it in the traditional sense, but the method I use to memorise the information to pass the exams means that I am far less likely to retain the information over time. This is, of course, a fundamental problem with exams that prioritise memorisation over understanding. The fact that I am not free to commit suicide is a problem. Yes, portraying suicide as a bad thing can be good to deter people who aren't ultimately in their right mind and are having suicidal thoughts that can be overcome. But to say that suicide is never justified is incredibly narrow-minded. Furthermore, to demonise the suicidal prior to their final act is an incredibly harmful thing to do. Those that choose to go through with it go out on bad terms with the knowledge, not that this knowledge continues after death, but that they have to come to terms with it prior to suicide, that they will have forever maligned their loved ones. And even worse, those who are forced to stay alive have to live out the remainder of their life in spite of the beliefs they held in the first place, and will likely resent all those who prevented them from making a decision that couldn't possibly be more subjective. And on top of that, you can't even necessarily live a life you wouldn't mind living. You have to earn money, which will likely require you to do a job that you will almost definitely despise. You didn't want to live, let alone live to work for someone else. You have to put up with the same things that made you want to kill yourself. Apathy, boredom, disgust at the stupidity of the masses, the impossibility of purpose. Something people need to become more aware of is the fact that evolution is random. Oh, no, that's because I just edited that. Right. And that'll be that. Thanks, Ollie. You're the best. You're so great. You think of really good things to say, and I really like it when you do that. So, bye.